Hello, everyone. Welcome to WD Carousel Podcast. My name's Ian.
And I'm Crystal.
And today we are going to continue our little adventure. Adventure is the wrong word, but we're going to do it anyway.
We are pioneering our way through Magic Kingdom.
Like we've been doing. It's been our COVID tour because we're sad. So we decided that we would continue on with our adventure on that side of the park, and we are moving our way into Frontierland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
I feel like
Frontierland.
This is also one of the more least popular lands.
Like just to hang out in for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you use it to get to, the two big guys, but other than that, there's not a lot of, I don't even think I've ever been inside one of the stores. No, I've been in Briar Patch, but that's the only one.
Okay. Yeah, because two of the three mountains are in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's got some heavy hitters, but people just seem to kind of overlook what it is, which is sort of interesting. But I guess what we can do is we can dive in here. So Frontierland. Go for it.
I was going to say, I do want to preface this a little bit as we are talking. This is going to be from the original Imagineering perspective, as well as what's going on now. So there might be some old thought sets behind some of the stuff that we will be discussing, and know that, WD Carousel of Podcast does not approve of some of the old views of the world.
Right.
I don't know how to place that.
We tried to be. I know. It's like, how do you say that properly? It's like some of the thoughts and feelings here about the way things that are done in Frontierland are not totally.
It's basically, and I told this to you. This is the racist Disney Parks Edition area. If you look close enough at the original intent behind some things, not that they were trying to be racist, but just the old mindsets about different cultures, different interactions, and that sort of thing is inherent in the pioneering world. And so some of that'll be discussed today. I just want to put that disclaimer out before we do anything else.
Yeah. Absolutely, I agree, and it's and yeah, exactly. Well, we're gonna address it head on just as soon as we get started, because there's some stuff in here. So yeah, here we go.
So Frontierland.
So from a kind of design perspective, obviously Frontierland is something that was in the original Disneyland. We're not going to go deep into the history of Frontierland and Disneyland, but more or less, the idea is the Imagineers want to invoke the pioneering spirit of the Old West, but that's during the 19th century kind of push into the frontier of the Midwest and the West. I
was going to say, now might be a good time to. We had found some quotes from the original initiation of Frontierland to try and get people into the mindset. This was advertisements that had gone out in regards to Walt Disney World on getting people prepared for it. And it says, Frontierland will relive the Old West much as it was a century ago when hardy pioneers first explored the wilderness. Keelboats and log rafts will cruise the frontier rivers of America. Frontierland is a tribute to the faith, courage, and ingenuity of the pioneers who blazed the trails across America. It is to those hardy pioneers, men and women of vision, faith, and courage, that we have dedicated Frontierland. Here you can return to the frontier America, from the Revolutionary War era to the final taming of the Great Southwest. Our adventures are designed to give you the feeling of having lived, even for a short while, during our country's pioneer days.
Yes. And as you can tell, they're taking and this is very classic to Disney, they're taking a very uh, real piece of history, and they're taking all of the most kind of romanticized and rosy glassed kind of parts of it,
Mm-hmm.
and putting it into this kind of movie environment that you get to kind of exist in,
Yeah.
which is pretty standard. And that being said, they when they went to go do the original Frontierland, Walt sent Imagineers to shoot a movie in this old like fake western town during the kind of in the 1950s, which was kind of during the craze of the initial, just like kind of how tiki culture happened in the
Mm-hmm.
in the 50s. It's the same thing. It's that people loved the whole idea of like frontier stuff, and
Yeah.
so somebody created a frontier town in Hudson, New York, and which is the weirdest place, and that's why they sent them there. I have no idea, but he sent the Imagineers there, and they kind of based many of the cues that we see in Frontierland off of
Probably
what
because
they saw there.
they couldn't get on the set with John Wayne, so that was the closest they could get.
Exactly. So that was the inspiration they had. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. But and there's even like the frontier town itself has like its own crazy history, but basically
Oh
like
yeah.
the biggest legacy of it basically was Frontierland, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, so as it did, it opened with the rest of Magic Kingdom, but there was only 3 attractions in Frontierland when it opened, which was the railroad, the Frontierland Railroad Station for the Walt Disney World Railroad, and Davy Crockett's Explorer Canoes, which I don't know basically anything about.
They still have them
And
in Disneyland, but they don't have
they
them in
do,
Walt
okay,
Disney World anymore.
okay,
Probably because of
okay.
the alligators.
Yes, the Gators probably don't make that great, and they actually did run those until '94, so it was quite a while. And then the Country Bear Jamboree was the last thing that was there, and it was the first place the Country Bear Jamboree ever was. It was not in Disneyland; it was Disney World where that was. So which is kind of
Interesting.
interesting.
We'll do an
Yeah.
episode on that in the future, I'm sure.
Yes, we sure will. We just keep finding lists of things to check off that we need to do for extra stuff.
Hey, that's how this works.
You know,
we do deep dives.
Exactly. Oh yeah, the more we explore things, the more we want to study other things.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, the next thing to happen in that land was Tom Sawyer Island. But that didn't open until 1973, so it was a little bit into
So
the
2
whole
years
operation. Yeah, yeah. And then then there's this kind of northwestern part of the land that they kind of had set aside, and it was supposed to be for a big e-ticket attraction, and we don't use ticket letters anymore, but basically that meant it was going to be this massive attraction. And
it was the Star Wars or Pandora of the time.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. You could only get one fast pass for it now. It was going to be the Western River Expedition, which was this kind of crazy multi-stage boat ride thing, and it's a big story unto itself, so we are not going to go into it today.
No.
But basically, let's just say it never materialized when it was intending to, because it was this massive pavilion. That land just kind of stayed vacant. There was nothing else there until in that space, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad was built, and it was completed in 1980. So that section was finally inhabited by Big Thunder Mountain.
Nice.
Yeah, and then so finally the last really big thing that happened there was in 1992 with Splash Mountain. And when they added Splash Mountain there, it meant that they actually had to push the Frontierland Walt Disney World Railroad Station back. And so when they did that, they just made it huge and added a second story to it and did all this stuff.
Oh, that makes sense then why there's a second story, because I've always been curious why the Frontierland entrance to the railroad is not ADA accessible because it's on the second floor.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
It's weird that they did that, but yeah, when they pushed that over for Splash Mountain, they made it 2 stories tall for reasons only known to them. I would have made it 1 story, but I wonder if it was how it approaches. I don't know.
Well, I mean, they're in between 2 of the mountains. Maybe it would be weird if all of a sudden they had like a visual drop in the scenery to go back to the railroad and then back up to the mountain. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, definitely. Like, we've talked about before in this series, even like they love their sight lines, so that could
Oh,
be
yes.
definitely a thing if it just drops off and there's this big hole. Yeah, very interesting.
So, what is the weenie for this land, would you think? Since we talked about weenies last week.
Yeah, I want to say, I want to say that it's Big Thunder, but I think that's wrong.
Yeah, I think it's Splash. Just
It could,
because when you
yeah,
think about entrances both ways, because you can get
yeah,
into this land through either Liberty Square or from Adventureland, the first
right,
ride that you're going to see, the big visual, is going to be Splash Mountain because Big Thunder's up and around the corner a little bit more.
right, right.
But
This is
I
true.
wasn't able to find an official weenie.
Right,
That
and
sounds so
neither of
weird
those.
on a
I know, I can't
podcast
find
level.
them. I know. Yeah, and it's funny too because both of those big structures did not exist until much later into the park's life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting as to when they built it, did they even include a weenie to begin with? And what would that have, because there wasn't that much there to
Or
begin
do
with
they consider
anyway. It's
or do they consider Tom Sawyer Island the weenie? I don't even know.
that could be.
I
That
don't
could be because that was only a couple of years later.
know. But
Yeah.
let's talk about the walkthrough since we're talking about
Yeah, yeah,
visuals and everything
absolutely.
here. So,
Yes.
how they had originally planned this, this is the only land that you cannot access from the hub. So you need
Right.
to go through either Adventureland and the old exploration days or through Liberty Square, which is, revolutionary times, and move into that land, which that's the direction I'm actually going to take us through because it kind of makes the
Okay.
most sense for flow. So
Yeah.
you go through Liberty Square, which we will address in 2 weeks,
Yep.
and the first thing that you see is the Diamond Horseshoe, which is dining, sit down, we will talk about later, but
Yep.
it actually is supposed to represent St. Louis, Missouri, which is known as the gateway to the American West. And from that point, you see it move from more colonialized, rigid structures and everything, and see it get a little bit more rugged and wild the further you get into it.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot more things like the next thing you come across is the shooting gallery, which, yes, they still have pop guns that you're able to shoot from, and the idea behind it is supposed to be like you are looking out through one of the fort entrances because they had these big established forts placed all around the west to enforce martial law and to protect the land from you know whatever. um
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
let your inner cowboy mindset roam, and so you're able to do things like there's a skeleton that pops out of a grave that you can shoot at. I think there's a prairie dog that pops up and a whole bunch of other little things, but it's something that you can you know get a feeling of like, and I'm going to sound like this is dated, but it was, new to the time when they made the parks, but, a 50s arcade feeling
Right.
from this game. And
Absolutely.
so it's neat that they kept that when a lot of those other older antique style things, like they got rid of the arcade in Main Street USA, but they were able to retain the shooting gallery.
Yeah.
And then you move to the trading posts where they have the regular sort of, merch that you can buy. But some of the fun things there are things like you can get coonskin caps, probably fake fur at this point,
Probably fake fur, yeah.
cowboy hats, supposedly wooden pistols. I'd be shocked if
Interesting.
they're still selling wooden
There.
pistols, but
Yeah.
it fits with the theming. And then even they have copies of the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad comic book that Marvel put out a number of years
That's
back.
cool.
So you can get all of those different editions too. And then
Neat.
you when you're looking at those buildings as you progress, you're going to see that there's, just the normal first level that you're able to go into, shop, all of that. But then there's the second level. But you're also going to notice that unlike the other lands, the second story to these buildings are not as well thought out and are obviously fake. And so there's been like posts that I've seen all over going, why did Imagineers skimp out on this? Why does it look so fake? Why didn't they,
Right.
why did they shortchange Frontierland? But what they actually did was something fairly historic, which I thought was really interesting. So in the 1860s through the early 1900s, there was a
Hmm.
popular architectural style called false fronts on all of the smaller, like, boom cities, the boom towns, where they would put up these fake second stories, and it made the businesses look more established, more dignified, refined, like the pioneers could trust them for whatever product, item, service they were offering. And you can give us your money and we'll give you a reputable whatever it be,
Right. So
bank,
it's
saloon,
oh
that sort of thing. So it's
right.
an intentional little detail that, unless you know the history, looks like, the Imagineers just kind of skimped a couple pennies here or there.
Yeah.
But it was an intentional um, addition, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. That's
Um,
really cool.
and then it moves toward the Country Bear Jamboree, where if you actually walk inside, and again, this is going to be another future episode, I'm
Right.
100% sure, but
Yes.
bears are actually some of the patrons too, which I think is kind of fun because if you look at the floorboards, you're able to see the claw marks as they walk in, from just their nails. Just as you're walking, you're going to get these little scrape
Right.
marks.
Oh,
Um,
funny.
Pecos Bills is the next big thing, which is a quick service eatery. And inside, first off, Pecos Bill is based on a cartoon character from a whole bunch of cartoon shorts that came out. But they also have a lot of gifts from friends inside there. So you're going to see an axe that was given by, um, oh my gosh, I am a bad Minnesotan.
Paul Bunyan?
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for knowing exactly what I was talking about.
You say Minnesotan, I knew.
But then there's all these other little, tidbits of gifts to Pecos Bill from all of these traditional Western folk heroes. And so it's a
Right.
fun little nod. There is also, and this is going to be the last thing that I kind of bring up here, but in the Pecos Bill area, you can see where they add on, and some of them look like they're supposed to be outside scenes that have just been, you know, covered to become interior, which is something that happened regularly as, towns, buildings, everything expanded, grew. And in one of the second floor areas, you're going to see Chinese laundry. And
Yep.
that's something that, even though it sounds kind of racist, was established in the early 1850s, that when the Chinese started moving out to the west for the gold rush and the railroad and everything, they started actually making all of these laundry services, and so it became a huge thing in San Francisco and in California. So they brought that to one of the windows here. Don't know why it is still there, but it is.
There's
So,
there whether or not it's really what you want, it's not like totally wrong, so they
mhm,
just kind of left it.
yeah. But then
Just,
you're heading towards the mountains where it's nothing but rugged.
right. Right.
So that is the walkthrough. Then you get to our Splash Mountain and the railroad entry, and then the Big Thunder Mountain around the corner there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Should we go through the current things that you can see
Sure.
there? I know we've kind of walked through them, but we can just kind of go through the list a little bit.
Yeah.
So currently, attractions. This is not just rides, but other things you can do.
Yes.
You've got, of course, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Country Bear Jamboree, Splash Mountain, and the Frontier Shooting Arcade, which is the shooting gallery that we were just talking about.
Hmm.
The Frontierland Hoedown happening. I don't know much about that one, but it's enough to make my brain break, apparently.
I don't know anything about it either. And this is one of the things where I've always Pecos Bill is my
Yeah.
number one go-to for quick service in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah.
So I head there for lunch and I head
Yeah.
there for the attractions. But that's not
Yeah.
one of them that I am familiar with at all.
There with. Yeah. Yeah. Then there's Tom Sawyer Island, which I'm sure we will cover separately. And then the Walt Disney World Railroad Frontierland stop, of course. And so those are things that are the attractions that you can actually do while you're there.
I will
And
say
we'll
the
yeah.
Tom Sawyer Island, you can only access it from a raft
Yeah.
near Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. So if
Yes.
you have, you know, movement, you know, requirements, restrictions,
Mm-hmm.
you might have a
Mm-hmm.
hard time transferring to the raft. And then once you get over to the island, everything is walking.
Yep.
So you want to make sure that you are aware of what's going on, but it's a very neat island to explore. And they do have a quick service option there. I think it's called Aunt Polly's that is open during peak times. So if it's really
Okay.
busy, you might have a food option there, but for the most part, that's closed. So
Closed.
it's not
Yeah.
something that you're going to, see a lot of, hear a lot of. There's actually not a lot of people that go over there, so it might be a good place to mellow and calm down.
Yeah.
But
It's definitely a good chill out spot.
yeah, but you need to
Yeah.
be able
Yeah.
to get to the raft to get to the island and vice versa.
Yeah. Absolutely. So moving on to foods, foods
Foods.
and things.
Foods.
Foods. We've mentioned this already. Diamond Horseshoe is sort of on the boundary between Liberty Square and Frontierland, kind of the gateway to the west.
Yes.
And that's like a does that words does that have a stage show
It
too?
used to. I'm not sure if it
Okay,
still goes, but
going
that's the
okay,
song that's still running through my head.
right, right. Because
So
I think they
they have
still run it in Disneyland, don't
yes.
they?
I know
Okay.
that I've gone through it for Trick or Treat Trail,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and there's a stage, there's a piano, there's
Okay.
tables for a sit down meal. It's not one that I have made a reservation to yet.
Right.
Obviously that'll be coming in the future, but you know,
Yeah.
it's one that I know they used to have you know, the horseshoe girls.
Yeah.
They're little can
Cool.
dancers.
Well, can't dance. Then there's the Golden Oak Outpost. Is that what
That's
is that?
actually on the other side in the entrance between Adventureland and
Oh,
Frontierland.
okay.
So that's that little cart kiosk on the edge there.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And the
Okay.
fun thing about the Golden Oak Outpost, because it doesn't actually fit the theming per se, is that
Right.
the Golden Oak Outpost was named after the, I think, 1959 ranch that Walt bought
Oh,
called the
but yeah,
Golden
yeah.
Oak Ranch,
Ranch.
where they
Yeah.
used it for live movies like the Apple Dumpling Gang and Tom Sawyer, and so they
Sure.
he bought the ranch, but then ended up naming a little nod,
Yeah.
quick service after it, which is kind of cute.
Yeah. That's funny. And then of course there's the one that everyone knows about, which is Pecos Bill Tall Tale Inn Cafe,
I really
which
like
I
their
up
tacos.
until very recently did not know that was the whole name. So there's that. um, so there's that, and then
Westward
Westward
Ho.
Ho.
That's
I don't know anything.
another
What
small
is that?
kiosk popcorn stand across from Country Bears.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you can get like your popcorn buckets and stuff there.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Gatorade, water, all that fun jazz.
The huge.
Yep.
Yeah, and of course, like anywhere in Disney, you're gonna find some gift shop operation stuff.
Mhm.
Um, we got Big Al's, which is what is Big Al's? Where is
Big
that?
Al is one of the Country Bears.
Oh,
And
okay.
so it is the unofficial gift shop for the Country Bears because actually, when
Oh,
you leave the Country Bears, you end up in Pecos Bills.
gotcha.
That's where the
Okay,
exit is. So they have
gotcha.
it on the other side.
Okay, okay. Nice. Briar Patch, that's obviously for Splash Mountain.
Splash Mountain. And one of the fun things
Splash
about Briar
Mountain.
Patch is if you're looking in the store, if you look up at the ceiling, you're supposed to feel like you're in Brer Rabbit's home.
Oh,
So you see
okay.
like a bed and bedroom set over here. You see a dining room set over here. You see his living room. So you're underneath the tree that Splash Mountain is kind of based around, which is,
Got it.
Brer Rabbit's home story, all of that. So the Briar Patch is the gift shop ish for Splash Mountain, because Splash Mountain also does have its own gift shop, unlike Big Thunder Mountain, which does not.
Not, yeah.
But it's also themed to Brer Rabbit's home.
Cool.
Which, if you have
Yeah,
any
and then
questions
there's
about Splash Mountain or Big Thunder Mountain, we have individual episodes already up about that, so go check those out.
we sure do. Goodness. Forget about some of these episodes we've done already.
I know.
Huh? I know. We've got, of course, the Frontier Trading Post.
Which I talked about a little.
Yep, talked about a little already.
I still want to look to see if they have any wooden pistols.
Right. That I am curious about. Interesting.
Yes.
Yes. And then there's the Prairie Outpost and Supply, which I don't think I've ever set foot in.
So the Prairie Outpost and Supply versus the Frontier Trading Post, they're both souvenir shops. It happens. Right. But the Frontier Trading Post is a little bit more like an established newer town feel. Yeah. So it's going to have a little bit more things like bolts of fabric and higher end spice racks in the background that obviously you can't buy anything, but you can see it. Versus the Prairie Outpost and Supply is more like the rugged catch-all store that you might find in just these little like pop-up towns that come out of nowhere. Right. So it's the general store. So you're going to find more rugged stuff than what you would for the, Frontier Trading Post, if that makes sense.
They kind of,
at least
were able to
theming
wise. I gotcha. They were able to kind of break down the souvenirs based on that.
And I think the Frontier Trading Post also has snacks.
Yay.
Might be hosted by Smuckers, but don't quote me. I know one of them is.
Okay. So you're going to find Smuckers in one of these spots.
Hashtag sponsoring.
Awesome. Well, goodness, that's Frontierland.
That is Frontierland. I think next time we are able to go, we will be spending more time there just to absorb the... I mean, it's so detailed and diverse. Like, I know that there is a line of clothes on the top of one of the stores that's supposed to be, I'm trying to remember exactly, it is a red pair of like the onesie pajamas that everybody used to wear, and I think those are supposed to be Davy Crockett's. And I mean, there's all these little things that I've heard from different cast members and different podcasts and YouTube channels and everything. It's so deep in, Imagineering that you can just explore it and explore and explore it, and you'll never again see the same thing twice. Yeah. But it's something that's so often overlooked that I think we need to spend more time there.
Absolutely. Very good. All right. Well, heavens.
Before we wrap up, one other thing. I will say, when you are on the railroad and then, the Liberty Bell boat thing that'll come in 2 weeks from now. But I feel like it fits more the Frontierland than Liberty Square. When you're on the railroad, especially, you're able to see all of these Native American, we're going to use the proper term, different settlements from different tribes. You're able to see like adobes and the teepees and the this and the that from the different nations, which I think is kind of fun. You're also able to see from Tom Sawyer Island, some of them as well. And this is where it gets a little questionable, because one of the areas on Tom Sawyer Island is a fort that has these fake guns that is lined up with one of the settlements.
Yeah.
And you can play cowboys and Indians, which is not PC anymore.
No, not
but
really a good thing anymore.
it's still there, as well as there is the I think there's an area on the fort as well that you can shoot at the runaway railway for Big Thunder Mountain. And I think it's supposed to be like stopping this with dynamite or something. I don't know what the Imagineers were planning there. I can't really go on Tom Sawyer Island due to my limitations, but just be aware that, Injun Joe is represented on the island, as well as, it's meant to feel like the old Western cowboy and Indian sort of situation. So even though it's beautifully done, just have that knowledge going into it.
Yep. It's not perfect.
No.
There's some issues.
But that's our history. That's our history. That's
exactly. It's our history.
That's where America came from. That's where Walt and his love for America had I have a quote here. It says, "All of us have cause to be proud of our country's history shaped by the pioneering spirit of our forefathers." He saw it from the Western expansion aspect. And so that's where this land is based on.
Yep. Absolutely.
Enough said.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, guys.
Yeah.
I feel like this has been kind of a long one. I have no clock, but it feels like it's been going for a while. But
it hasn't been that bad. But
that's good. Okay.
It's definitely a very big land, and we want to address it. So
yeah, and often overlooked.
Yeah, this has been WD Carousel of Podcast. My name's Crystal,
and I'm Ian,
and we hope you have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. Bye, everybody.